I want to thank you all for coming. I hope you learn a little bit tonight. I'm learning an awful lot from these meetings, and I hope you do too, and it makes your modeling better. The person we're going to hear from tonight is Eric Diehl. I'm really looking forward to this because Eric is like I am. He's a traction guy. And I think there's few and far between around, at least that I can find. He belongs to the same club, the Detroit United Railway organization that I used to belong to about 25, 30 years ago. And Fred Cosgrove used to belong to it too, who's here tonight. So Eric, I'll turn it over to you, and thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I was hoping that a couple of other friends of mine would join, and I haven't seen them log in. I hope the link was working for them as I forwarded it on to them. I don't know how to use Zoom. That's the only thing I knew what to do. So it worked to get me on here. The thing that brought Jim and I together was a article in the Trolleyville Times several months ago talking about some 3D printing that I was doing. And we got on the phone and talked some more, and I told him a few of the things that I was doing other than 3D printing, some of the methods I was using, and he thought that sounded interesting. So I agreed to give a little talk and demonstrate a little bit. You might find it useful in your model building. But that's one of the things that I am is focused mainly on car building. I do have a small two modules that's part of the DUR club that I run cars on at home, but the purpose for it is so I can see what it looks like on the track after I build it. So I don't have a lot of track. I don't have scenery, much scenery, as you can imagine, with just 2 modules. So tonight, I wanted to just show you a few of the cars that I have on the shelf behind me. I have some examples of different construction methods, and the main thing that I would demonstrate in that is fastening roofs onto the car. So I know in the model literature there have been a number of methods explained, and I think I came up with one that was a little unique. And although I still use old methods, I have kind of branched out and started using some magnets to attach roofs so that I don't have screws or anything to fiddle with. Make it easier to get in and do maintenance, fix something's always going wrong. You know, a wire comes loose, you know, a passenger comes out of their seat and they have to be shown the way back. So one of the things that I'm working on right now is this Michigan Railways car. And this is one that I really wanted, but I didn't know how I was going to get to it. When the opportunity for 3D printing presented itself, this was one of the first ones that I I commissioned to have built. This is the, it's a combine lounge or smoker, regular passenger, and solarium parlor. Okay. I 3D printed the side frames, and I'm using a Stanton Drive 8-foot wheelbase. These were big cars, 8-foot wheelbase, Stanton Drive. The length of the car is 67 feet, 8 inches. They had another one that was 66 feet, 10 inches, so like 8 inches shorter. They had one of the 66 footers and probably about 8 of the 67 footers. So I got to remember to hold it up so you can see. Now, what I did on the inside, they were powered by pole, which I don't have on top, but I have plenty of poles. I just plug one in when I'm ready to run it. Pantograph, and you can't see probably, but third rail shoe. These were high voltage. I'm just taking a guess, but maybe Fred can correct me. It was at least, what, 1,300 volts on the ground? Do you remember, Fred? Is Fred there? All right.
I do not see Fred in here.
Okay. So they would have the third rail protected up until the station, and they would have coverings over the third rail at the station, but other than that, it was wide open, and it was fenced off, but certainly something you didn't want to mess around with. But as rural as the country was back then, they didn't have any accidents as far as I've read. Now, the inside. Let me explain first. One of the methods that I started using back in 1981, 82, I used screws, and then I started using dress snaps. And I'll show you that. LaBelle kit, Ohio Electric. Just a little pressure on the roof and off it comes. And you've got dress snaps holding the front and the back. Okay, that's a what's it called? Spud, Tenchado Spud, 7-foot wheelbase. Now, I don't know why I decided to not do dress snaps, because I still have plenty of dress snaps, but I got to thinking about these magnets that I could get very free from our shower curtain. And I thought, well, maybe they would work. And so I tried that on this LaBelle Penn, Ohio. Changed the roof. Instead of a railroad roof, they had a arch roof. And you can see on the inside, the big shower curtain magnets holding the front and the back. This is powered by two Bachmann 44-ton mechanisms. I don't recommend having two motors, but it was something I read about in the literature and I thought I'd try it. Now this car, I used the shower curtain magnets and just glued them right on top of the partitions. Now the interior is also 3D printed. Cost extra, but if I was going to have a solarium and an underfloor mechanism, I definitely wanted to have a interior to show off. So now to couple together the electronics, or the lights, I don't really call it electronics, I use, can you see, brass tube telescoping brass tube, solder one lead to one and the other lead to the other. And after you get the friction, just crimp it just a tad so that the friction will catch on the inside and make contact. Then I coat it with the insulating goop plastic electrical tape, you know, so just coat it with the liquid plastic electrical tape. Yes, you can go to another room. So anyway, that makes it easy to take off, you know, disconnect, and reconnect, and put back together again. I also have tried just friction fit. This is a trailer, Dayton, Ohio. Just extra lip around the inside, and it fits down pretty nicely. And oh, by the way, magnets for a coupler centering mechanism. I saw it in a traction magazine, and again, just experimented, thought I'd see how it worked.
So how did that work? I've never seen somebody use magnets to center a coupler before.
Well, I think I could do better. They're fairly weak. You can see it's not really pulling. Yeah, you can see there's a little bit. So you've got a magnet here with a brace, and then the magnet is connected to a, I'm trying to move it there. If you can see the magnet on one side and the magnet on the other, as I'm moving the coupler. But I need stronger magnets or get them closer together. And when you back them up, they jackknife.
You tried the rare earth magnets?
No.
And you can screw, they got a hole in, so you can screw them in place, and they're fairly cheap. You can buy dozens of those.
I would glue it. This one is a rare earth magnet. They're bar magnets, and they're a little strong. I can feel a little more strength in it. So yeah, I tried it. As I said, I think I could put them closer together and you get a little bit better centering. But if it gets too strong, of course, you're going to pull them. It's going to pull the other cars off the track because they won't swivel. So. Also, on the vein of friction fit, this is a kit bash. That's a prototype of the Dayton and Miamisburg Barney and Smith 34-foot car, and it's what I used to kit bash was a roundhouse old time series, and then I used metal ends, cast metal ends for that. But the rest of it is a roundhouse mechanism, or excuse me, a roundhouse car body roof, and then the mechanism is a Walther's Doodlebug. Very nice, quiet, slow running. Got them for like $25, and sacrificed the body, which may someday become it's the bodies of the Doodlebugs, by the way, are St. Louis Car Company. So you can kit bash them into an Interurban very easily. But this one's hard to take apart, and it nests inside. So the sides, the windows, and then I have clear plexiglass, not plexiglass, clear plastic, but thicker, that slides down in, and just by friction, you know, it holds it together. And it's pretty tight. That's why I'm not going to try to take it apart. This is another prototype, similar. Again, I used sides from a roundhouse car, metal ends. This is the Cincinnati, Dayton, and Toledo traction company. And I put a Walther's Doodlebug mechanism in it. It's got one magnet in the center, and it's a rare earth magnet, and it's stuck on pretty good. So I'm not going to try to take this apart.
I could just tell you guys from my own testing, because I'm designing some magnetic fasteners for use with some of my cab kits. Depending on the magnet, they could be a bear to pull apart. Like my prototypes that I tested, now they were tight fit to begin with, but you really can only use like 2 of them if you want to be able to get them apart easily. You know, if you're adding more magnets in, it just the strength just becomes exponential, especially when they're so close together.
Now the rare earth magnets that I'm using mostly are these little disc magnets, little buttons. I saw them in Home Depot a couple of years ago. I looked for them a few days ago and I didn't see them. But if one's not strong enough, you can stack another one, because they're so thin. You can even stack them with use a shower curtain magnet and stack one of these on top and make it stronger. I've done that in the car. So these are a couple of cars that I've built with the rare earth. Well, this is a shower curtain magnet. What's this one? Yeah, these are shower curtain magnets. These are Indiana Service Corporation for Wabash Valley Flyer train. So I've got the little turtle here, and I've got the combine here. These were photo etched brass kits from Locomotive Workshop that my dad bought back in the 70s. And again, the roof is very easy to take off. I've got room for lights. Again, I used 10 Shadow Spud to power both of them, one in each. And they run very nice. Let me see if I can find the rare earth. Okay, here we are. This is one of my photo etchings that I made when I lived in Iowa. As you may see, it's a open platform observation. The 102, I think I made it. Yep. So when you're out there and you're following the right of way, you just got to have something that represents it. So I was a soccer coach and also did high school refereeing. And so I was traveling around, and invariably I'd have to go by, you know, the Cedar Rapids in Iowa City or the WCFNN. And so I got hooked on those trolleys too. Now you can see, hopefully, inside, rare earth magnets, top and bottom, you know, front and back. I used a brass brace across it, and then epoxied the magnet to the brace, and then the roof set magnets I ground out in one place. I ground out a hole and put it in there, and then another brass cross piece there. Um, when I was working with the 3D printing, it's plastic, and so I'm not going to try to put a brass piece in there. And I did try I put a plastic cross piece out of plexiglass here. So it's a stiff, thick piece of plastic. And when you put the magnets in, depending on whether I have a hole drilled or gouged out, but you can epoxy one of them, let it set, and then you put the other one in place in the roof and just put it right down on top, and they self-center that way. And to keep them from gluing together, a little plastic film, food plastic wrap, saran wrap, whatever, doesn't take up any thickness, so you get the roof down nice and snug. And so that's another little trick that I figured out. These are rare earth magnets, so I only needed one on each end. The power truck is a PDT this time. First time I tried using a PDT. They work okay. Oh, big light in the middle I used to, just because I had it. I don't go for those big lights because it takes up so much room, but since I had a railroad roof, it was all right. This prototype is the Barney and Smith 54-foot coach that ran on the Dayton, Springfield, and Urbana. And there wasn't much marking, but I did copy the picture that I saw, and this is the destination sign, and it's just a photocopy of the book picture. It was actually a drawing. It just says Dayton, Springfield, local. So when I'm working with the plastic and I'm using the, I was using the stiff, thick plastic to make a brace across the top and glue it into the inside the letterboard, I realized that I really didn't have to use something that stiff. Now, one of the tricks that or methods I've been using to put window material in is this glue. Seems like it's backwards. Can you read it?
Yep, we can.
Okay. Stick and seal, Loctite stick and seal. The advantage to this is that it's a silicone, so if it gets, and it does, squished out into the window opening, it's pretty hard to see. But if you want to remove it, and I do, it peels off very easily, just like rubber cement. But it holds really well, especially to things that are flat. And so I was putting those windows in with that glue, and I thought, why not just put another layer right behind it? You'd never see it. So the same window material, made out of a transparency, or I don't know what it's called, but I cut one out so that if you can see this little bracket that I made, and it folds, you know, very easily. I do it with my hand, just fold it over, make sure that it's the same width across the inside of the car, and just slide it down, glue right at the top and where the letterboard is, and then you're ready to put your magnet on. Now, I was looking at these big shower magnets and the small rare earth magnets. And several years ago had been thinking about why not use these refrigerator magnets, maybe to stick buildings onto my module after I moved it in and set it up at a show. You know, just plop the building down. Here's a refrigerator magnet. You get a lot of these in the mail. I've got tons of them. And so they're cheap, no cost at all. So what I was looking at was, you know, if I cut these strips and I put it together, it slides. So that's not going to hold, is it? But if I go the other way, you can feel some resistance. And with these refrigerator magnets, the material is magnetized in strips. If you ever had a science class where they played around with magnets and they sprinkled iron filings on a magnet to see where the North and South Pole are, on this sheet, you'll see little lines, one right after the other, north and south, north and south. So if you're going, I'm using my fingers to demonstrate, if you're going this way, there's no resistance. But if you try to go this way, there's the resistance. So instead of just using one at each end, because what would happen is you'd either have the roof sliding off this way or this way. Okay? So you turn the magnets so that the ends keep it from going this way. So the ends are locked in this way, and to avoid it going forward and back, you put one in the middle. Okay, so you have three. And I'll show you what that looks like with this car. This is a Cincinnati Street Railways 3D print. So I've got three. The middle one keeps it from going forward and back. The ones at the ends keep it from going side to side. And just one little coupling to hook up, plop it down, and there it is. And like I said, when you put it on, you glue one first and then put the other, this one is hardened, so it's firm, put the other one in as it's gluing right on top, and make sure that it's, you know, within the sides, so there's nothing sticking out, or that, you know, it's not prying the roof off. So it's completely inside, and it's snug down on top, and it glues. So you've self-centered, and your little bracket you can't see because it's down inside the windows. And the main thing, or one thing that I found by accident, don't put one of these over a motor because it freezes it up. So I don't know if this is strong enough to do that, but I used a rare earth magnet, and no. So I had to go back in, change it, and then it was fine. So another thing I just wanted to mention about with my scratch building is don't be afraid to go and redo something. If it doesn't look right and you haven't invested a lot of time and effort into it, you'll be happier if it's, you know, the way you want it. Other times I've just said, I don't care, it looks fine to me, and let it go. But as with any model building, you're the one that has to be satisfied with it. And so the you know, what you do is your business and how you do it. But I just wanted to, you know, show you a few things that work for me. I'm still experimenting. I'm not very good with electronics. In fact, I'm still trying to figure out how I did a constant brightness thing. I've never used 1.5 volt bulbs. I've always used 16 volt, but I've got all these 1.5 volt bulbs. I thought surely I could figure out how to do this with a resistor or a diode, and I still haven't figured it out yet. So if anyone can advise me on how to set up this car, I've got 6 1.5 volt bulbs, including the headlight, and it works fine with a AA battery. But if I use a little button battery that's supposed to be 1.3 volts or 1.5, it doesn't show up. The lights are very dim.
Use a
So
bridge
I'm trying to
rectifier.
figure out how to hook it up correctly. And even if I could fix a capacitor with it, that would be even another plus. But
Bridge
anyway, I also don't do much, as I said, with the buildings and the scenery, which, you know, that you do what you enjoy doing. And for me, it's been car building. So I have some other demonstration right here. I have another car. This is the Charles City and Western. I actually worked on this car when I was stationed in Boone for a wildlife research project for several months. So I was a wildlife biologist and other times a soccer coach, and now I'm a customs officer. So, but I'm using my biology degree in customs as an inspector. This is the number 50. And again, using the rare earth magnets on the front and back, you'll notice this mechanism is huge. This is a spectrum doodlebug mechanism, and it's heavy. Same with this. Spectrum doodlebug runs very nice. If you can fit it in there and you don't mind taking up all that interior with a motor, do it. And these cars were wide anyway. They were steam railroad cars, trolleys, so to speak. And so they were like 10 feet something wide. Most other interurbans are 9 something or even 8 something. So another 3D printing that I just recently finished. I'll be selling this to one of our club members. This is the Northern Ohio Coleman, and I used a Bowser mechanism inside, and you'll see the 3 magnets, sheet magnets, front, middle, and back, holding the roof on. And when you put the pole up, it doesn't slide off, so they're good for, you know, what we need it to do. Also, being from Southwest Ohio, I have an affinity to all those little interurbans like the Dayton, Springfield, and Urbana. These are the Dayton, Covington, and Piqua steel cars. They only had 2, so of course I had to make both of them. And they had some wooden cars, Barney and Smith, like the others the little shorties that I showed you, but they were thinking big, and they got these beautiful steel center entrance cars. And wouldn't you know that with only 2 cars, they had to number them 30 and 32. So that's what I've got, 30 and 32. This is something that I'd never scratch built out of styrene since I was in college. I built a little DNR-GW, or excuse me, Rio Grande Southern Galloping Goose number 2, because I was at the museum when I was 10 years old and got the plans and never did anything with it. So when I was in college, I scratch built it out of styrene. Well, I hadn't done anything in styrene or a scratch build since then, till this came along. I had planned to make these out of photo etched brass or nickel silver. Nickel silver is a very nice material to use in photo etching. But I moved from Iowa to Michigan again, and couldn't set up my my etching machine. And then Micromark came out with these decal rivets. And I thought, maybe I can do this out of styrene and put the rivets on with decals. So it took 14 months, and I did them both at the same time to try to save time. I don't know that it did, but it was fun. And I found that cutting the windows and doors to make the mullions didn't look good at all. I went to strip and glued those little strips in there. The decals I had done by a good friend of mine, Paul Mayer, who did Shoreline decals. And these were the last ones that he made the spring before he died. I didn't realize until that summer that he was going. And so I really did this up special. And oh, I should mention for Paul Mayer's sake, he commissioned this. He wanted this car. And so I made a bunch of them, sold them to him, and then he sold them to other friends. I don't know if any of them ever got built, but there's the one that I saved for myself. So anyway, sometimes I get carried away with the details. And this time I was going crazy on the striping. If you look at the striping real close, you'll see that it's doubled. There's a thin stripe inside a thick stripe. And the way I did that, I took an inch stripe, took scissors and cut it in half. Then with one edge, I left a lot extra so that I could move it. And I laid one down, and after it was set with Solvaset and clear gloss, I went back and did the next stripe right next to it, and with an extra long edge so that I could get a hold of it and it wouldn't, all crumble up. So again, it was fun. It just, I kept going on the details. So I did the window guards, soldered those. There's directions in some of the traction literature on how to make window guards. So I followed that. On the inside, boy, this one's tight. There we go. Inside, I put fiber optics for the marker lights. And I used dollhouse copper strips in the roof for connections. Not absolutely necessary. I sometimes do it, sometimes I don't. This is a Bowser mechanism. I can't see it very well. I added seats, and where the motor is, I took a little cue from Bachmann. That one's gone. I took a cue from Bachmann. Was it Bachmann that had the PCCs, the plastic PCCs? Who built those? Is it Spectrum?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So they disguised their motor with a mirror inside with seats between the window and the mirror. So it looks like they're double seats. So I did that. I cut some seats thin enough and put a mirror in there. It's a plastic mirror from the auto parts store. And so just disguised the motor there. Down here, of course, there was no motor to disguise, so I just had the regular seats there. So Now, I mentioned locomotive workshops, and my dad was a traction modeler and had some of these sitting in his drawer. So after college, and I had more time to spend, I decided to build this one. This is a Cincinnati and Lake Erie, but I lettered it for Cincinnati, Hamilton, Dayton, the original. And so it was built in 1923, 24, 25, somewhere around there, right before, like 3 years before they got the Red Devils. So this was the Conway's first purchase. He went with a steel car. They were running on the old Ohio Electric wooden cars that I showed you. And so I had to have one because it's right in my backyard. I knew where the right-of-way was, and my dad had lots of books on the subject, so there I was. So this was a locomotive workshop's brass etching. I had to have the coach too, because I like two-car trains. This one is my own etching. This is nickel silver. And this one, these cars, the roof is not really holding very tight. They're the shower curtain magnets. So I need to either just be happy with it or put some new magnets underneath and try to strengthen it a bit. For power, I used a Bachmann Brill power truck. They were selling for like $25 on mail order back in the early 90s, I think it was. So I don't like these so much because they're very stiff, and they can jump the track very easily because of the wiring and the limited swing that they have. I've tried to get it opened up as much as I can, but that's that. But they ran pretty good on my layout. Just once, they still jump the track every once in a while because of that stiff power truck. Why do I have something from New Jersey?
Oh,
My dad was from New Jersey. So I'd go back to visit Grandma, and we'd always see the Pennsylvania Reading seashore lines. And this is their electric car. The big shower curtain magnets holding it on. And that's an Ogden brass mechanism. When Joel Lovitch had the bullet cars ordered, he ordered extra of these mechanisms. And so it was like $100 for this mechanism by itself. But one of my best runners. It's awesome. It's very well worth the money. Another photo etched car. This is one of the first that I did a year ago. This is Michigan Railways that started running between Flint and Bay City, or Flint and Saginaw. And it ran on third rail as well as overhead. I haven't put the pilot on yet, or painted the underbody or the trucks. But I used the 3 sheet magnets, and I have all these open frame motors. I thought, well, I'll give them a try again. I'm not happy with it, but some open frame motors run fine, but not this one. So I'm probably going to change it to a can motor, or maybe find another open frame motor. But it's the old Sidem mechanism. I picked up a couple of them at the Hoosier Traction meet, and from Jim Rivers, actually. They're beautiful mechanisms, but they're noisy. They're not like a can motor or what was I? The Walther's Doodlebug is one of the quietest, and it has an elastic band or a rubber band. Then they're not the jerky rubber bands like the old Athearn, but but that quietness comes from that neoprene O-ring or whatever that you put in it. I was making decals in the early 90s when I was in grad school. And a lot of these cars have my own decals on them that I just decided to make decals for whenever I would get to this project. So the Indiana Service Corporation, the what do you have? The Wabash Valley Flyer, those are my decals. But I also did the Fort Wayne City decals. So what was I going to do with those? I decided, first I did a Fort Wayne City car, used a Kidder double truck Bernie for that. And then I started kit bashing. I thought I'd use a, what was the one of the old time steam coaches. It's not MDC, it was one of the larger ones. I'm trying to remember. But anyway, I started cutting it down, and I started with the front end and the back end. I thought, oh, that looks pretty close. And then the more I worked on it, it's like, this just does not look right. And I'm doing more, scratch building than I am kit bashing. So I just started over again, build everything from sheet styrene and strip styrene. The roof is the only thing that I salvaged from the plastic passenger car. That's a, I keep wanting to say Tyco, but it's not Tyco. It's Mantua. Use the shower curtain magnets with rare earth magnets. So I combined the two. And because it held better than just the shower curtains alone. Can motor, and if some of you ever have heard of the Andico mechanism, these are beautifully machined brass O-ring driven mechanisms. I got a few of them, some from my dad, some from a friend, and they're heavy and they grind just like a interurban used to do. But there's, it's a freight motor. It's kind of slow, but my decal, I made two sizes. I thought I would make one for HO and one for O. Well, the HO one, I was measuring for the double truck Bernie, the streetcar. Well, when I put this on, it just is kind of small. But the O scale was too big, going by the photograph. So I really needed something a third larger than this. And maybe someday I won't, because you can't read it very well. It's Indiana Service Traction and Light. I can take it off and put the O scale one on. But
Eric, before you get away from that car, the Model Railroad Warehouse did the etched brass dashers
I
for
remember
that
that.
car and the decals in HO and O scale. So those were available. I know that Model Railroad Warehouse, I think he's retired now, but there are some sets out there. I did I built up the master car for him. Built it for him. So
okay. And you are, is that Roger?
the Chrysler, that's right.
Yeah. I thought that was you. Okay. Because yeah, you've done a lot of nice work on for him. I remember seeing that.
Okay, very good.
But yeah, my dashers, I just used this little clear plastic film,
Right.
and masking tape, and painted it with a brush, and came out passable. I guess one of my favorite things to do is put a motorman and a headlight in my cars. It just doesn't seem finished without it. Even if it doesn't have an interior or seats, I just like to at least have a motorman and a headlight. So my last two, this is a prototype, the Cincinnati, Hamilton, Dayton turned Cincinnati and Lake Erie 200 series suburban car. This I made from a Kidder double truck Bernie. And again, I found I was scratch building a lot more than I was kit bashing. All the window posts had to be moved. They weren't the right spacing. The doors on the left side both had to be filled in, front and back. The ends had to be modified, lowered the windows, put the dasher in, and then the back windows too. So I tried a little experiment using a friction fit with the PDT. And so what I came up with was front and back, just sliding it, and I needed to add a lot of weight. So that slides up in there, but it's really too loose. It keeps coming out, so I need to fix that. The power mechanism is still pretty tight in there, so I'm not going to take it out. I thought I wouldn't like the PDTs because they still have this overhang, and but it doesn't really seem to get in the way. The only problem with this particular one is I haven't freed it up enough to, it's too tight. I don't get enough swivel. Since it's a short wheelbase car, it doesn't hurt it that much, but on a longer wheelbase car like this one, you definitely want to make sure that the PDT swings. Oh, photo etched Barney and Smith trucks. You can't get them anywhere else. So one of those things that I got carried away with the details, and it's like, nope, I got to have the Barney and Smith. So I had my friend do those too. It was like $15 for a set of 4. So it wasn't too bad. I'll make one little note about a kit bash that I did using the Peter Witt Spectrum, Bachmann. Anyway, they have a flat front. They use the Baltimore car as a prototype. Baltimore is the only streetcar system that had a flat front. So if you want to make anything else, you're out of luck unless you're going to do a kit bash. So I had a second car, and I cut off the back, put it on the front. Then I lowered the letter boards, put skirts on the sides, gave it a visor, moved the front window mullions, and same in the back. The only difference between this and the prototype is it's one window short. One thing I learned about my modeling is know when to stop. It's good enough. And with this nice mechanism underneath, there was no way I was going to cut into it and try to extend it and ruin the wiring. So I just decided -1 window in the back is okay with me. And it runs great. So it still looks like an Indianapolis car. Again, my decals on it. So that's the end of what I have. I wanted to also, well, I should mention about the 3D printing. Andrew Husted is in Ann Arbor. He started up his own little company called Ann Arbor 3D Models. And I think you can find a website there.
Yep,
Um,
that's right.
well,
Hey,
yeah.
Eric.
Oh, you're on. Great.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'll let you talk a little bit too. But the first time we met, I saw him. He was printing out a cupola for an N-scale caboose, and at the Division 6 show in December of 17, no, December of 18. And I said, I think I've got some projects I'd like to have you try. And so I showed him the plans out of the Michigan CERA book. And he took photographs of those plans, went back, put it on AutoCAD, and 2 weeks later he calls me and says, I've got it. And I'm like, how could you do it in 2 weeks? Because it takes me a year to do something like that. And so then I just went crazy. I ended up doing 6 different prototypes in the year of 2019. So it's a fast way, because I'm not getting any younger. When am I going to complete all those projects that I have, in my brain, that I dream about? Well, this is the way, because all you have to do is paint it and put an undercarriage in it, and of course you have to wire it, but it saves an awful lot of time, as you can imagine. So Andrew, would you like to say a little more about how the process works?
Yeah, I think you covered a lot here, but it's actually cool. I hadn't seen the interior painted on that Michigan Railway car, so that looks really cool. I actually have some unpainted ones here, and this is an NOTL that Eric was showing off earlier, just to see how they are made. And even less assembled, the ends are typically printed separate from the sides, and those are separate from the roof. And sometimes, as Eric has showed, obviously, he likes the roof separate, and he creates his own mechanisms for attachment, temporary attachment. But sometimes they're just glued when I make them for people. I'm not a trained modeler myself, so everything I've learned has been through customers, especially interurbans, I should say, has been all from Eric. So it's been pretty cool learning about the trains themselves. So basically, Eric provides detailed sketches and photos, and then we kind of collaborate, figure out what details are most important, what features he really wants to capture. I create a digital file of that. I send him the file for viewing and validation, and then we go to printing. Sometimes we'll print a couple times, a prototype here, a prototype there. But once those files are good to go, they can be printed over and over and over, and they can even be rescaled. So this is the NOTL and O scale here compared to the HO. So it's been really cool working with Eric over the past about year and a half now, although we haven't seen each other for a few months now.
The interesting thing that I learned from Andrew with the printing is that if you have a piece that isn't right, you can just fabricate that piece over again. So I saw some roof walks that didn't look right, and so I shaved them off. He printed out just the roof walk, and I glued them on, and now I'm happy with it. This is one of the roof walks that he did, and I had to cut it so that it got around, so I didn't have room for it where the pantograph is. But we did a South Shore car, realized that one side was missing a window. Same with a Milwaukee Electric car, was missing a window. We had a blank where it should have had a window, or vice versa. So it was just go back, reprint it, and one side or one front end, or I think he did on this Cincinnati car, he did just the front ends, just the front and the back ends, and the roof, and then I can use my Bachmann Brill cast-offs to make the rest of the car if I ever get to it. But those that just like to kit bash, or you need a part like the Barney and Smith side frames that you can't get anywhere else. It's very simple. A few photographs and maybe a drawing. We can even do without a drawing, take photographs and, just if you know the measurement of one part, like a window, you can fabricate the rest of it from that. So it's very versatile. And like I said, if you make a mistake, you can go back and correct it. And you're only fabricating one part at a time. It's not like you have to commission, 50 or 100 and hope to sell them. This is just one car for a modeler. Whatever you want, your favorite prototype you can't get anywhere else, it's easy to do.
Eric, let me ask you a question.
Okay?
What kind of money we talking about?
Sure. For the first shell, so sides, ends, roof. For the AutoCAD, about 75. For the printing, about 75. So you're looking at 150. So if you're able to pay that kind of money up front, you just want one copy, that's it. But if you want to sell them, then you can sell them for, I'm usually charging $20 extra for a commission fee. So when I went to the Hoosier Traction meet, that's what I was asking was, and every copy after that first one is, was it $70, I think?
Yep.
So then $20 on top of that. So we're looking at $90 for a shell for the second, third, and et cetera on after that.
That's any scale?
Any scale. Well, it's cheaper depending on how much material you're using.
Yeah. So the O scale is about double that.
Okay.
So twice the material, twice the cost.
So the O scale then for the CAD and for the setup and so forth, that would be what, 150 for the O scale?
So the CAD work, I think on almost all of Eric's has been between about 75 and 100, maybe high point.
Yeah, you're not doubling the CAD cost though.
No, CAD cost remains the same, and any file that has been created can be scaled for no cost, essentially. So that's just you're paying for production at that point then.
So then what you're talking about, instead of $70 for an HO, you'll be talking about 150, say, for O scale.
Yep.
Okay. Let me ask you another question here. What glue do you use to glue the 3D printed parts together?
I've used a combination of things. I've used just standard super glue, cyanoacrylate, and I've used this Testors liquid cement for plastic here.
Yeah, I tried. I couldn't get mine open, so I didn't use. I couldn't use it. But the super glue, and I've also used Gorilla Glue. The only problem with Gorilla Glue is you have to have it really clamped because it expands and it'll push your joints apart. But super glue, even the viscous kind, that's worked well for me. I even had to break apart some things to readjust and glue it back together again. If you're careful, that glue joint will break and not the parts around it. So it's good to know if you're trying to move something and readjust that you're not going to break the windows trying to break it apart if you're careful. But it is plastic, it is lightweight, and you're also counting on your window material to add a little strength to it. But I've made a number of them, and I don't find them any more fragile than the car bodies that I've kit bashed. So,
I'm not sure if I mentioned, but it's ABS. It's acrylonitrile butadiene styrene. So it is a styrene. So yeah.
I have a question on traction trucks. How do you do the three-dimensional aspect of it? Do you need a cross-section of the truck?
the side frames, are you talking about the side frames?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can.
Yeah, that helps 3D cross section. Because Andrew, you're trying to build it up.
Yeah,
Right.
we haven't. Well, we've only gone off sketches and photos, you and I. So I think well, usually when Eric and I first sit down, I'll ask him questions. Is this farther out than this? Is this rivet the highest? And we'll kind of determine heights and depths of things. And then once again, after I get kind of a first shot, I send him a digital model where he can see the three-dimensionality of it. He tells me if anything's off. I make adjustments, and then we try to get it down pat before we go to printing.
Right.
I mean, you'll print a copy just to try, a part, just to see what
Oh yeah,
it looks like before we go and print the real thing.
absolutely. We can cut, we can take out a single feature. Is this rivet size right? Is this whatever? Pretty much anything can be cut, sliced, and printed by itself. Don't have to do the whole thing at once.
Do you
So-
do freight cars?
I have not done any, but there's really no limit to the digital work, at least. So if we can get it to look right in 3D printing, I can do it. It's kind of how it's been with Eric so far.
Yeah, it's no different than doing the passenger cars.
Yeah.
Andrew, what's your contact information?
It's Andrew at AA3Dmodels.com.
Terrific.
And Andrew, do you have a website?
I do. Yep. It's AA3Dmodels.com. And actually that's, it doesn't show all of Eric's projects up there, but I do have photos of all of at least the digital models. I have pictures of most of the ones I think you painted, Eric.
Okay.
Now you have your own printer.
Yep, I have 2 printers that I use right now.
That's impressive.
There, I can actually point the camera and take a look over here.
Oh, I might mention that one of the projects that Andrew is working on for me this year is the Muncie traction terminal. So it'll be the first building that I've had printed or custom made. I have no idea how much that's going to cost, or I have some idea of how much it's going to cost, but it's one of those that my dad had gone, photographed it, and made drawings of it before it was torn down. And so he started to build it out of wood, and then it got crunched, and then he never pursued it after that. So it's one of those that I have to do just because of him. But it's a nice little 4-track trolley shed with a office building connected to it. And it's going to be part of a new module someday. But you can do anything that we scratch build with 3D printing.
Eric, you mentioned Boone, Iowa. Have you ever modeled any of the Fort Dodge and Des Moines cars?
Not yet. That's on my list.
I rode that last week. It was in service.
Really, that's wonderful. I did take a MEW brass steeple cab and made it a Fort Dodge Des Moines and Southern paint scheme using my decals, of course. I've got plans for the 62, but I want one of the other ones. I want one with a flat windows instead of the arch windows. So I'm probably going to have to just guess at it. I've got the Fort Dodge book, and it doesn't have drawings of those cars. It only
Right.
has car 62.
Hmm.
I should look at
Eric?
the old files.
Turns out I got that information for you that you asked about earlier. The voltage on the Michigan Railway,
Yeah.
up until 1916, it was 2,400 volts DC. After 1916, they converted it to 1,200 volts DC.
Okay. Yep. One of those fascinating tidbits on the Michigan Electrics. By the way, they
Well, at one time, of course, the South Shore was high voltage too until Insul took over
uh-huh.
and converted the voltage to the same as IC.
Uh-huh. If you're out in the Pacific Northwest, Russell,
Yeah.
did this car ever make it to a museum? They were last
Which-
run on the British Columbia Railways or the Puget Sound Railways. It was one of the Canadian steam railroads.
I'm not that familiar with all of the traction that was out here.
Yeah, they
Um,
went as trailer cars for a steam railroad in British Columbia.
Well, I doubt if they crossed the border, frankly.
Okay.
A lot of
maybe it
those
was in
older
Washington,
cars
I don't remember.
that were used, traction cars got converted to used by logging railroads as crew cars.
No, well, they did get used as camp cars in Michigan for
Yeah.
consumer power. They
Yeah.
also converted one or two to a trailer car for the New York Central Railway. But one at least went out to the Pacific Northwest. And I thought that it had been saved and put in a museum, but I don't know for sure.
Where Raoul Martin, who started Northwest Short Lines, is retired and lives out here. And he was very much involved with traction. He would probably know,
Oh,
and I can ask
Okay.
him.
okay. That'd be great. Just curious. I don't know if I'll ever make it out there, but nice to know if I could even get a picture of it.
How about the Yakima Valley Railroad that ran out into the orchards? You familiar with that?
Yes. Actually, on Shapeways, you can get a Yakima Valley passenger car, a little short Niles car.
Very good. I grew up in Kansas City and I rode the traction there way back in the 50s.
Yeah.
And I've got two really good books on the system, but I've never seen any models of any of those cars.
Well, the only real interurban that I rode was when I was 6 years old. I rode the Electroliner just before the North Shore line closed up. So that gives you an idea how old I was. But or how old I am. The cars that I build tend to have some family connection. So because of my dad, that's why I've got some Philadelphia stuff. I'm not crazy about Chicago street railways or CTA, but any of the interurbans, yeah, I love those. So, but as I said, I'm from Southwest Ohio, and most of my stuff is Ohio, Michigan, Indiana.
Good stuff.
Yeah. And as I said, if any of you can help me with the lighting of that car, how to handle 1.5 volt bulbs set in parallel, and yeah, I'd go with a battery if I had room for it, but I don't know, see how I have room for it. So I might have to hook it up to the track, and then I need some kind of resistor, or I thought a diode would be sufficient, but I couldn't get it to work.
As I was saying before, Eric, bridge rectifiers they'll work between 15 and 7.5 volts, and you can they put out 1.5 volts off of those. So you can hook a bunch of them up together and run a number of lights off those. They're very cheap and give you good power.
So I thought you could make a diode bridge, and that it would run 1.5 volt bulbs in parallel, no matter how many you had, or a
Yeah,
few of them at least.
That's right. That's what a bridge rectifier is.
Okay. Well, for some reason it didn't work for me the other day. I have to try it again.
Try getting a commercial bridge rectifier, maybe.
Oh, yeah. So you're not taking up so much space then.
Right. Yeah. They're very small. They're like I don't know, 3/8 of an inch by 3/8 of an inch.
Where do I get them? Radio Shack's gone.
Electronic stores. There's some that I think Evans Products sells them already hooked up to LEDs, 1.5 volt LEDs.
Yeah, I kind of like to use my bulbs. I've got so many of them, but yeah, I saw those.
Yeah, you can still hook up more of those to the two sides to run your LEDs as well.
Okay. I wonder if he sells the bridge rectifier in by themselves.
Could be, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but finding it and knowing what value to ask for is kind of a puzzle to me. I'm not, even with the resistors, I'm not sure what I'm doing with those. So, but anyway, any help would be welcome. Appreciate it.
How many 1.5 volt bulbs are you trying to run at one time?
6.
You're probably pulling too much current with the older incandescent 1.5 volt bulbs.
Well, I tried testing it with one. I tried testing the 1.5 volt bulb with the bridge rectifier and with 2 diodes or a resistor, and all 3 ways I could not get it to light. So I don't know what's wrong.
You should only take 1 diode and actually take 2 diodes back to back in line with the motor. And what happens is the diodes will drop 1.5 volts. That's how come you're able to put a 1.5 volt and basically paralleled to the diode itself, and that's why it'll light up.
Yeah. Yeah, I tried also the 2 diodes back to back, hooked it up in series with 1.5 volt bulb, and it wouldn't light. I don't know why.
Not in series. The diodes need to be basically in series with the motor, and the light is paralleled onto the diodes.
Oh. Well, I just had the I was using a 9 volt bulb battery because I wanted to make sure that it didn't blow the bulb out. So I hooked a 9 volt battery to 2 diodes front and back to the bulb and return back to the battery. Shouldn't that work?
No.
Okay.
What you're doing,
It didn't.
9 volts across the diodes, and it's wonder it didn't blow up. Can you give me a email so I can send you a diagram of what you need to do?
Yep, definitely. We can correspond. I can be more in detail what I'm doing or what didn't work. It's DIE. It's my last name, DIEHL.
Okay.
And then my initials NE. That's for Nathan Eric.
Okay.
At AOL.com.
All right.
Is it M-E or N-E?
NE for Nathan Eric.
Got it.
Yeah, what you're talking about is was the old constant lighting that was used years ago in open frame motors. Can motors, I hope, will draw enough juice to do it, but open frames I know will.
And I'm trying to get this to, I will hope to get this to work with a Stanton motor, which you can't put it in series.
Stantons don't hardly draw any juice at all.
It's
I
got
don't
two
think that'll
leads,
work. Yeah, no.
so you can hook up to two leads, but you cannot. The only way I'm going to disconnect the wipers from the wheels is when someday I go to only overhead, and I have to deaden one side.
Okay, the Stanton, because I do have those, they don't draw very much current at all. You'd be lucky to get an LED to run off of the diodes in series with a Stanton.
Really?
Yes,
So should I go to a battery?
I would go to a battery at that point, yes.
Well, I've got to figure out how to get some space in there with a disc battery of some kind.
Eric,
Yeah.
here's a bridge rectifier hooked up to an LED, and you can see my finger there. That's the bridge size of the bridge
Wow.
rectifier there. Those
Very
are tiny.
small.
Yeah, and when I'm using DCC, I hook up two of these together, so they're each in series, so they're each drawing at least like 7.5 volts. So so I don't burn them out.
So I'm using these micro mini bulbs, and can I use that bridge rectifier with them?
Yes, you can. Yeah.
That'll be the same?
Yep.
Okay.
Gives you a constant 1.5 volts off that.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yep.
definitely want to figure out or find a way to get one of those and put it in. But again, I guess I'm going to have to get a battery that works too, and a battery holder.
Yeah.
Somehow I'm going to put it in there. Well, if I get a 1.5 volt battery, then I don't need a bridge rectifier.
That's true. Yeah. Problem solved.
Yeah. Okay.
The LEDs don't drain the batteries as fast as the bulbs do, so you can light a lot more LEDs than you can the same number of 1.5 volt bulbs. So
Yeah. Well, if it doesn't work, start over again.
that's right. Yep. What else you got but time, right?
Like I said, if you're building it for yourself, if you don't like it, do it over.
That's right.
Try again. But I just, like I said, I've got all this stuff and I just would like to use it without buying more, but I don't know. I've got some LEDs. Maybe I'll have to just scrap the bulbs, put them in something else. But then again, I'm still wondering how to use a 1.5 volt bulb. So I've used the 12 and 16 volt bulbs for so many. I just have bypassed these 1.5 volts.
I do a lot of DCC installs, so I'm a convert to LEDs. They run cool and last forever. You don't have to end up changing bulbs. So and they've become so bright and the right colors you need to use and everything else. So it's
Yeah.
I think light bulbs are kind of the yeah, you may have a lot of them, but use them for lighting some structures or something like that maybe. But
Yeah.
that's the way to go, I think.
I don't use DCC, so I'm still using DC, and I'm still trying to run it off the rails. Everything,
Right.
all my headlights are connected to the motor and to the rails. This will be the first time I try to use a battery. And I got reed switches. I can put a reed switch in there too, and turn the battery on and off without taking the roof off. I don't know.
So you're not running off the overhead?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, yeah.
I say rails, but I mean,
Sure, yeah, yeah.
yeah, one rail and the overhead.
Yeah, the with DCC, I've been converting everything with the keep alives, and man, that sure solves your dirty wire problems everywhere. So
Uh-huh.
nice running. So anyway,
I have a
Yep.
question for you, Roger. I just remembered, You've probably seen a lot of photos and have books on the London and Port Stanley.
That's right. Yep.
Did any of their cars or rolling stock or locomotives have their herald or logo on the car?
Yeah, very early on, they had a big City of London logo on the side.
Yes.
And actually, the car that is preserved at Halton County Radio Museum has that
It does.
emblem on the side. Yeah.
I've ridden that car.
Oh, yeah.
I never noticed
Yeah.
because I have that decal. I
Oh,
made
yeah,
it.
very good.
I was hoping to someday build a London and Port Stanley car and use that decal, but in the pictures I've seen, I've never seen one with it.
Right. So I've had Black Cat produce all the lettering for those cars in decal sets. So you can get that from them in HO. So about $8 for a pack. So
Okay.
that's Canadian too. So
All right.
even better deal for you.
So are you still producing the photo etchings of that car? Or two cars?
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't produce them. Model Railroad Warehouse did.
They did.
And
Okay.
they brought out a number of them, and I'm not sure whether they sold out or not. He's since retired. He was in very poor health.
Right.
I have 3 sets of the car sides, the etchings at home, ready to sell to somebody when they want them. So,
Well, it wouldn't be
there's,
hard. It wouldn't be hard for me to do a 3D print of it.
right. Yeah. I think there's two of the 70-foot cars and one of the 61-foot cars. So that I
So
have.
which was the one that had the logo on it?
I believe the 61-foot cars had. Yeah. I haven't seen the 70-foot cars came along a bit later, and I don't know. I haven't seen a picture of those with the logo on. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, Eric, I can't thank you enough for this. This has been great for me. I've really enjoyed it, and I think everybody else has too. Thank you so very much for everything that you've done tonight.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed doing it. Like I said, I didn't know exactly what I was going to say. I just sort of sat down and started doing it, but I'm glad it turned out all right.
I think it was great. Listen, before anybody leaves, I've got another issue here I'd like to address and get your opinions about. A couple of weeks ago, I said, well, maybe instead of just having one person talk about their modeling, maybe we ought to have a time when it's kind of show and talk about or show and tell. And let each person that's here, have an opportunity to talk about what they're doing and maybe ask some questions and get some input. But, we've been here, it's what, 8:35 now? We've been here an hour and a half already just with Eric. And so I don't think we have time in our regular meetings because each one of our meetings are going about an hour and a half, 2 hours. The other thing that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago was the possibility, and frankly, Andrew and Eric, I think you guys might want to take a shot at this. I'm not sure. But if we could get a leader that could kind of take us step by step through a scratch building project or a kit building project, where we'd be able to see how they built it and the questions that they had and the issues that they were running into, and maybe build a little bit of it each week, where we could all kind of learn how they're building and see what they're doing. But again, we don't have time in our meetings. So assuming that this kind of thing would be of interest to you guys, would you want to have another meeting a week to do this? Or would you like to say, well, we won't have one person talk like Eric did tonight, and we'll take one of the meetings a week to do this with? Or would you just like to keep going like we're going and forget these other two things?
We could have a limit to the number of models and shows. Maybe show 3 models or something and talk about those, and go on to the next guy. That would give everybody a chance, and Wouldn't drag on too long, maybe.
Or a time limit. Now, whatever you want to cram into 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever you want to set.
Yeah. Yeah, something like that. But at least it would give everybody an opportunity to talk about what they're doing or what issues they're dealing with. Kind of like Eric did with his lighting tonight.
Right.
Mhm.
But why don't you think about it? You don't have to give me an answer right now. I'm going to, I think that there's some potential for that. I really do. Particularly, I can see taking a 3D project with Andrew and Eric and seeing how it all comes together. Because I'm interested in 3D, but when Andrew says, well, I work from photos and so forth, I'm not sure that I'm not sure what I would send Andrew or what Eric would really need to for a diagram to send Andrew. I'm just not sure how that would work. So I would be interested in that kind of detail and hearing, just watching a project come together in 3D. Because I do think that may be the future of a lot of model building in the world. And we might as well learn how to do it if we possibly can. I can't do the CAD so that's out for me. But I would like to be able to participate in the modeling.
Absolutely. I think it's wide open. And we can certainly, Andrew and I talk about, working on a project, maybe make some recording photographs or videos and send it out. It would certainly help if we could get together to see the product as it's developing. But
well, that's what I was thinking, Eric. Why can't you and Andrew? We can set aside time. We do 2 of these a week.
Mm-hmm.
So if we'd like to do something on a project once a week, for example,
Mm-hmm.
then that's fine. Maybe instead of sending us videos and that kind of thing, maybe you could just show it. This is the kind of photos that have to go to Andrew. And then maybe sometime Andrew can say, and this is what I do with the photo. This is the kind of questions that Eric has to answer for me in order to be able to design the part or design the piece.
Yeah.
And this is then what I send to Eric, and he has to approve this. Well, how does Eric go about taking this thing that he gets from Andrew and knows that that's what he wants to pay for?
Okay.
Yeah. And on the next project, it might be maybe the Muncie terminal would work, although it wouldn't capture the train, the interurban process so much. But I can easily screen record while I'm doing the CAD work. That's not a problem at all. And then I can even, Eric, I send you those viewer links. I can make those accessible to others.
And then
well.
I've never seen, and it may not be possible to do this, I've never seen anybody make a 3D part from a digital whatever. And I'd be interested in seeing what's involved in actually seeing that part produced from whatever, Andrew, you have created.
Yeah, okay. I probably have some footage of that I can share.
That's the kind of thing that I was thinking about. We could do a little bit of it on a weekly basis so that we're not just trying to cram all of this down our throats, but maybe spread it out over 3-4 weeks or something like that, a little bit at a time, so that we can get a sense and be able to ask questions as we go along. Well, why is this important? Why do you do this? Why do you have to do this? Is this the only kind of photo I can send? Do I have to have the diagram with the photo? What scale of the diagram do I have to provide you?
Yeah.
Because frankly, I've never dealt with 3D before. Until frankly, until Eric and I started talking, I had never seen a complete 3D model before. I hate to say that, but I'd never seen one.
Well, I guess Shapeways has been only in existence for maybe under 10 years. And that was the first time I'd ever seen a 3D printed traction car. So it's still pretty new.
So anyway, Eric, if you and Andrew could give some thought to it, maybe we can talk later about it and see what we might be able to put together. And guys, if you think you might be interested in this, maybe we could pursue this as an option.
Okay.
All right. Well, that being said, next time we have a rather interesting modeler, Joseph Van Inberger. Joseph was born in the Netherlands, lived overseas a while, now lives in the U.S. He has a company, or lives in Canada. He has a company called Canuck Models. Makes logging kits. Neat guy, neat modeler. I've never seen the kind of stuff that he's doing right for logging right now. So he'll be the one that is the featured modeler next time. And he'll be there Saturday evening at 7 o'clock Eastern time.
Woo!
And that's all I have.
All right.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, guys.
Thanks for